Good afternoon for everyone. Buenas tardes. Y ahora, it's a privilege, it's an honor and a pleasure uh, to share with you this very special bell that was made with weapons of Second World War and has like the shape of a Buddha and it has the heart in the head. And I think that this is a message of transformation. It's a message of transformation. This is what we peacemakers are doing all the time, transforming the pain in something good for everyone to share. We were sharing our sounds, our music all this week. Some music was painful because of the pain that is going on in your countries. But the bottom line is that we have a will for loving, for meaning, for purpose, and to continue doing our work in spite of the obstacles that we may find on the way. So it's very heavy. So I'm going to, perhaps you want to hold the bell, Matt, and if you want, you can close your eyes also in thankfulness for the wonderful host that we had here, wonderful food, wonderful people. I learned so much about the Maoris. I had no idea. I knew of their existence, but I didn't have any idea. I'm taking things for my folks there, for the Guarani Indians also, or native people. So if you want to close your eyes so as to center us into the goodness that we have experienced. And because this is a sound that is harmonious, and this we will all take with us. Okay? And I'm just going to call. Peace.
Thank you so much. At a certain point, we realized that this is truly an international conference, not just because of the nation states, but the peoples, the traditions, the sounds, the vibrations. I'm not going to take much time as the MC of this, because we have three extraordinary women. Yes, it's not a coincidence that they're women. It's not a coincidence, actually. It's one of the privileges of being Secretary General, now former co-conference coordinator, that these three women are people I've been privileged to know for a long time, and they come with stories. And all I want to say about this, by way of introduction, then we will have Bettina, Washington, Akilah, Jaramogi, Rosa, Moline, from Wampanoag people of Turtle Island, also known as Massachusetts, USA, from the Maroon peoples of the Caribbean, also American, also known as Trinidad and Tobago, and from the people of West Papua, who are unrecognized as a nation state. We could say Indonesia if we want to ask for her passport, but from the ongoing struggles of Pacific peoples and peoples all over the world who are occupied, still struggling for freedom. And so when you have some positions of privilege and power, like people who look like me, in terms of race, so-called, which is a fiction, but a very powerful one. In terms of gender, which has its own fictions, but very powerful ones. And when you stand on land all the time that it's assumed you might own, but you never should, the idea of decolonizing the academy and struggling for people's freedoms and liberation, as well as for an end to patriarchy, and to capitalism and to all forms of imperialism and racism means privileging comrades, friends, family, and shutting up. So with that, I'm going to shut up and welcome with great pride and honor Bettina, Akilah, and Rosa to take away this closing plenary with reflections and remarks of their own. You can stay there if you want. Do we have, yeah, we're good. Yes, yes.
Isak, Natassalis, Bettina, Washington. Good day. I'm called Bettina, Washington. I believe I was given 10 minutes, is that correct? Yeah, I'm probably not going to speak that long. I did not have any slides because that is how I entered this forum. It's not my mistake that I am first. Not because I think I'm better than anybody. It's because this is new to me. First of all, thank you to each and every one of you for the opportunity, for your welcome, for everything I've learned and all I've experienced. All of you have expanded my knowledge on a global scale. Looking out at all of you in all of the creators' crayon box. What a lovely and beautiful mosaic. Oh, what happened to that thing? The reason I wrote it is I'm trying to keep it together. Whether you're in your traditional garb or today's traditional garb, because we are all traditional, whether indigenous or not. We say indigenous, and I know how we use that in a non-colonial term, but we are all indigenous to the earth. She is the mother of us all. I recognize the amazing gifts of the collective voice of hope. I've been given the opportunity, offered it. I've been given a gift, but not to own, but to share. It is simple. Being among all of you right now, to say all the right things, to do the right thing. First of all, you're all here and you didn't correct me, right? Or you can share that experience. But I've got all this packed away in my little knowledge knapsack now. I'm gonna put it on my back. And I'm going to leave you physically, but not spiritually. I'm not leaving you out of my heart. When I return to my homeland, whether it's in Brockton, whether it's on the Oak Bay, but more importantly, the US, what am I going to take out of that knapsack? And what's going to come out of my mouth? And what am I going to share with my tribal people, my townspeople, my city people, and all those governments? Only what goes on in those, but what is going on, just leave it, with the rest of the world. That's my challenge. And I expect every single one of you to hold me to it. When the Papa Museum came to repatriate at the Peabody Museum, they asked to have the local people come and share in the ceremony. It was one of the most, even though I was doing repatriation, it was the hardest thing that I had experienced. And at the end, the gentleman said he had gifted the chief who couldn't be there, and I accepted it on his behalf. And if I'm correct, and let me ask Almar if I'm getting this incorrect, but this is how I understood it. It represented closing the door. That is, this particular ceremony is finished and done with. And I thought about that last night. And we have this door, and it's and it's open, like almost all the way open. And on the other side is our armies, and they're just pressing against this door. It's pressing against this door. But on the other side, pressing up against that door were people. And just pressing against that door and holding that door and trying to close that door. And then there was a line forming behind it. And I could see people coming in. And as more people joined, that door closed. That's our job. That's the job. The job. Because if we don't do that, then nothing really matters because we're not going to be here. Somehow we have to learn to live together. It's concentric circles out, and that's what I've learned. There were other representatives from Turtle Island here, so when we had this oneness prayer, even though she's not on my tribe, when she's in Manitou, I knew exactly what she meant because we say that too. To all those who speak English as a second language, I am deeply indebted to you because it allowed me to understand what you were bringing forth. I did not speak a second language. I find that bothersome, where the U.S. is supposedly one of the leading countries of the world, and we for the most part, most of us do not speak a second language. That's a problem. It isolates us, and all for the wrong reasons. That's just my personal opinion. So I said, I have already identified people that I want to share what I've learned here within my tribal community and my town community. For those of you who came to my presentation, it was actually working through that I realized there hasn't been much reconciliation. What we've done is we've somehow learned to live together without really dealing with the problems. It's like having a good friend and you have a really bad argument, and then you get back together, right? But you never look at what happened. So there's always that uneasiness between you. And I'm not saying that we have to become good friends with the town, with the state, but we need to understand our relationships. And what does that mean? It means a lot of hard work. And it's definitely hard work when we're going to talk with it through our tribal members, all the decolonization, because for most of us, all we know up until 1987, we only knew the form of government was the US government. And that's not our form of government. But we were forced in order to get the recognition to do a constitution. So, but again, I just want to thank each and every one of you. And I want to say thank you to my husband because he was my logistics. And had it not been for that, I probably would be out someplace else and not be here at all. But thank you for everything. Thank you. Katawatish.
Ekasan, Kiora, Wika, Tau, Bamu, Oyiki, O Bateni, Lege, Fiorisa Peche, as I say, Omi Tutu, Ona Tutu, Ile Tutu, Ori Tutu, Tutu Laroye, Tutu Ariku Babawa. I give thanks. I give thanks to my ancestors. I give thanks to everyone gathered here. I give thanks as I call on the energies that guide me through, the energies that I depend on to take me on journeys throughout the diaspora and the world. I give thanks. I offer greetings as I pour libation to my ancestors, known and unknown, seen and unseen. I invoke the spirit and healing to the Supreme Being on all spiritual levels, to those ancestors who were enslaved, abused, deceived, hated, lonely, misguided, neglected, oppressed, pained, saddened, traumatized, tortured, murdered, and died tragically during the Mafa. May the light and what I offer to their soul inspire and grant liberation, faith, love, peace, and harmony from this day on. I pay homage to the Maori people, a community deeply rooted in your culture as I witness and tradition. I acknowledge your dedication to ensuring that your mana and tapu are upheld for generations. The Maori people, I see you're deeply grounded and value the sacredness of Papa Tuanuku, Ashe. I see your strength. I feel the presence of your ancestors, their pride, their joy, and their aruhu. As we continue to walk the path less taken, I salute you. When ancestors are honored, we all are enriched. Kia kaha, kia kaha, kia kaha. and blessing to IPRA family here, all of you, for being connected, guided, grounded, and standing in full solidarity with our Indigenous communities who have suffered from the crimes, injustices, and atrocities committed against us and continue to commit against us by the oppressive structure of colonization, including systemic racism that is deeply entrenched within institutions and our lives, our lived reality that continue to marginalize and silence our voices. But no, let our silence be no more. May the platform you have created, this platform that you have created, continue to strengthen demands for full rights, truth, survivance, justice, and guide us all towards healing, equality, and restoration of balance in our communities with a clear understanding that there's nothing about us without us. Ashe. Again, I reflect on this conference theme, peace, resistance, and reconciliation. I pause as I seek permission to speak on behalf of my African ancestors and offer guidance through the Iro Mole, Orisha, and protective spirits who, by the power and order of Olodumare, will assist them in their greater act of evolution. In the light I offer, may this light serve as a beacon of hope and an escape as a protective shield from the shadows of despair, in oneness with the ancestors who resisted this oppressive system and never surrender, liberators, freedom seekers, freedom fighters, as I call their names, Harriet Tubman, Ibashe, Henry Christophe, Ibashe, Paul Google, Ibashe, Zombie, Ibashe, Nat Turner, Ibashe, Marcus Garvey, Ibashe, Kwame Ture, Morris Bishop, Papa Niza, Tatma Jaramogi, Queen Nanny, Rosa Parks, Jackie Garvey, Claudia Jones, Walter Rodney, Queen Mother Moore, Sojourner Truth, Russell Maroon Shotaz, Ibashe, and Brother Sekou. I call your names. I call their names, but the struggle continue. The struggle continue, and we're here to ensure that healing starts with truth, honesty, justice, reconciliation, reparation, and love. My will continue. Over the years, as I dedicated myself to advocating for the rights and recognition of my people, my Maroon people throughout the diaspora, I continue to seek justice from the Maroons of Jamaica to Suriname, Brazil to Haiti, Dominica, Martinique, Guadeloupe, Colombia to Guyana, Antigua, Grenada, Carriacou, St. Vincent, Belize, Barbados, St. Lucia, and Trinidad and Tobago, my American people who came from Apalachicola, the Maroons from Apalachicola in Florida, the Gulaguchis who are our family, the Black Seminoles, the Yamasi, the Kalinagos, the Mayas, the Tainos, the Temnes of Carriacou. I call their names. Let us not forget the Garafunas from Belize, St. Vincent, Honduras, and Nicaragua. Oh, I call their names. Our Maroon Indigenous peoples working together, one voice, working together. And as I look at time, I'll quickly show you some of the work that I've been involved in. My advocacy work as a young girl making the decision to go in the hills. When I started hearing Bob Marley and Marcus Garvey and Walter Rodney and Morris Bishop, I say, I have something to do. I need to answer the call of my ancestors. So I moved away from my community in South Trinidad and I head to the north. But going to the north, where I always see the photos of the hills, I say, I want to do something. I want to live up in the hills, like you hear, if we could live up in the hills. And I wanted to do that. But going to the hills, it was not easy. I met a degraded hillside, a parched hillside, a hillside where you would see community people running away from the forest during the dry season, the fire season, because that area was once classed as a fire climax zone. Patterns of the colonizers that they learned, burning the forest during the dry season for farming, slash and burn farming, and have parched hillside that they would call good soil. But then I told them, no. You got to honor Mother Earth. You got to see Mother Earth as sacred. You got to see her as a source for our existence. So here me, my late husband, we converted that fire hillside, fire climax zone into a healthy agroforestry project from 1982 to now. After his passing in 94, I continued to stay on with my children and the community. In working on, we started to get recognitions on all levels. They called me the woman of the hills, earth water woman, the woman of the forest. Some even call me an Obia woman, but I say, Ashe. So here we got one of the national awards for the work from the president. Then I couldn't sit still. I was called by my elders in South Trinidad that I have to come home and do work. I have to come and answer the call, and I did not stay still. I went down south from 1999, 2000, we started, and there I started making noise because the way I'm situated in the north, I had the attention of some of those media personnel, so they were just following me around. And as I went south, I started making noise and talking about our rights as people who came, our land rights, because after we fought on the side of the British, it was not about fighting for the British, it was about us getting out of America in 1816. So when we settled in South Trinidad, they gave each soldier 16 acres of land because that is what we bargained for. They tried to pull out of that negotiation, but we stood our grounds. Our ancestors ensured that we get what we, agreed upon. And there I had to go and fight because the state did not recognize us, and a lot of our lands were being taken away. But as we started making noise, slowly and surely, they understood our goals. And then I continued throughout the Caribbean, in 2014, going different places, taking this mission across. We linked with the other Maroons in the Caribbean, forming United Maroon Indigenous Peoples, where we advocate for the rights of Maroons, not just in Trinidad, Jamaica, and Suriname, but unearthing the truth of our Maroon ancestors who fought for their freedom. And this history was deliberately hidden. It was not in the school books. Lecturers would come in and say, first time I'm hearing about this. All of you from America would come down to South Trinidad, but it starts anywhere there was plantations, you would have found Africans resisting the shackles of the colonizers. So from Virginia to Oklahoma, Texas, and all over, we were there. From Spanish Florida, where I had to form an organization today, where Andrew Jackson came after the war and destroyed that Negro fort and killed over 300 Africans who were on that side. But here what? They were there 100 years before the war. That was their freedom ground. They called it Prospect Bluff. So I still go today along the Apalachicola River in Tallahassee and pay homage to my ancestors, and also call my brothers and sisters, my indigenous brothers and sisters, to come along the Choctaw, the Yamasee, the Kulaguchis, and others to come in and pay homage with us. Again, it did not stop there. I wanted to do more as I was guided like some professors and others who understood the UN system, you have to go to the UN. You have to go to the UN. There I called Matt. Someone told me about Matt and some others who were out there doing the work. And by 2019, we made our first visit to the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. And there we tried to understand how to get our voices to be heard. It was hard sitting among the first peoples, who were accustomed being there. But bit by bit, we did not give up. We continued. And by 2021, again, we continued the work, going to UN, to Dominica, to unearth the truth about our Maroon ancestors. We are supported by UN Permanent Forum and also UN, the UNFPA. They give us some funding to go to Dominica to find our brothers and sisters, along with understanding the Kalinagors and others who were there. Thank you. I know my time is up here now. But again, we continue. Here we are at the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. And again, our people in 2023 back to the UN. While at the UN in 2022, we had the special rapporteur at a meeting with him, and I said, how can we get this, advocacy work going? How can we get some attention from the UN? We just don't want to come like window dressing and sit between you all. We want answers. We want some sort of, reparation. And there, the special rapporteur, we invited him to Jamaica, and he was with us in the forest, and so on, as we share our stories and share our way of life. And again, 2023, we had our gathering. You can see IPRA people, Matt, and some of you who can make out yourself there in Trinidad, where we share this story too, so you can make out, those who can make out themselves there. I see you beating drums with us in the photo there, but again, it was an opportunity to share our stories. And yes, so there's the work. We never sit down, we never sit still, we never surrender. Being in Panama through the Escazú agreement, standing up and talking about environmental defenders, with the organization in Panama. Here I am there. They will continue. Then there was the UN Permanent Forum for People of African Descent. It started in 2022, so I've been there, I've been in Geneva, then back to New York, then back to Geneva again, sharing the stories. Then in Canada, the Indigenous Peoples Gathering with the Indigenous Peoples of Canada. And again, my own African life ways. Part of this has been deliberately taken away. So our form of reparation, our form of peace is reclaiming our language, reclaiming our religion, reclaiming our African life ways, not just in Trinidad and Tobago, throughout the Caribbean and the Americas. So all my African brothers and sisters, I tell you, we have to continue this work. As I say, Opinifuno Lorun, Iba Olodomari Oba Jike Mojiloni, Mowogun Merina Ye, Iba Ilawore, Egbejeleri La Funi Wuladu, Ente Olodomare Kopajo Ikuida, Iba Oloworegbo. As I give thanks and pay homage to the east, to the west, to the north, to the south, to Orun and Aye. Let this fight never end. There will be no equal rights and justice until peace is here, truth is here, and love. I say thank you for being, and thanks to the space. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe.
I'm really moved by presentation, stories told by my two wonderful elders, sisters. And I feel like as a younger one, I'm not there yet, but I will follow the step their setup. Before I speak, I just want to pay respect and acknowledgement to the Tangata Whenua, the people of the land, especially because Taranaki is very important for me in my journey on this struggle. In 2009, I was a student in one of the universities in Auckland, where I met Heather DeFeer, Professor Heather DeFeer, David Roby, Camille Nakid, a Trinidad descent of Trinidad who teach in Aotearoa. And at the time, I was a human rights activist based in West Papua, and I had a chance to visit Aotearoa. And the reason why I'm telling this story, because sometimes when you are in the middle of struggle, you don't have enough time to reflect and to see broader than just your struggle. But when you travel and you live somewhere, then you can see what exactly you are fighting for. So during that time, I had a chance to travel down to Taranaki and attend Parihaka. And it's just a very significant day because we are now about the same time as in 2009 when I visited Parihaka. The Mount of Taranaki speak to me because it was rain when I drive down with my friends to here. But then I could see the rainbows appears just under the mountains of Taranaki. And it speaks a lot to me because rainbow is my ancestor. So I call the name of the rainbow in my language. And then my friend who drove us down, he's a Maori, and he said, he just called the name of the rainbow in Maori language. And that's the beginning of the spiritual connection of my journey to this struggle. And in Taranaki and in Parihaka, I learned about the Tiriti o Waitangi, which is actually reflecting what happened in my own country, West Papua. That's why I put the title, The West Papuan Struggle for Self-Determination, Unfinished Decolonization Process in Asia and Pacific. Why is Asia and Pacific? If you see the map of this, I wish I could bring all the map of the Pacific because I want to also recognize the struggle of the people of Maui Nui, French-occupied territory in the Pacific. We have my brother Tamatoa here representing his people. I also want to acknowledge the struggle of people of Kanaki, New Caledonia, and people of Bougainville, because their situation right now, it's not because of their fault, but it's because of the role of the European colonial. So then we are now here as unfinished decolonization in the region, in the Pacific region. And of course, in this land, it's also unfinished. Decolonization and self-determination is still ongoing process, just like our brothers and sisters in Australia. So if we see that, and also I want to acknowledge that many of the islands in Indonesia was also taken over by some group of people who call themselves having the nationalism to liberate the people. But actually there are indigenous people in those islands have been taken during the colonization process in 1950s to 1960s. So yes, that's West Papua. People used to call us Irian Jaya, which is abbreviation of the long sentence called Ikut Republik Indonesia Anti-Netherlands. That means follow Indonesia anti-Netherlands. So we have given names by our colonizers. Even the West Papua names is also because that's the name that can uniting us. And we're sharing the same land with our people in Papua New Guinea. So if we talk about the whole massive land, we are about more than 1,000 tribes. So we struggle since that time, but actually it's far way back, even before that struggle. We have people struggle, people fighting for independence, for liberation. That's the Morning Star flag. It might be very uncomfortable for people when they see the flag. If you raise this flag in West Papua or in Indonesia, you will end up in jail at least for 5 years for the act of treason under Indonesian criminal law. On the other side is the coat of arms. If you see this bird, you can see this. This is the bird that we use for our coat of arms. And why flag is important? Because you can be killed just because you have a flag. I cannot bring the flag because of the risk, but I have my t-shirt. I also want to acknowledge many of my Indonesian friends who are in solidarity, fighting with us. And I also want to acknowledge some of the Indonesian young scholars who are also participate in this conference. I hope they are here. Sometimes they probably not here because it's uncomfortable for them to be here and listen to the presentation or even just look at the t-shirt I wear. But that's something that I have to do to remind people about our struggle and our fighting. The Morning Star is very important in the Pacific Ocean culture because you cannot navigate your vessel if you don't follow the stars. And Morning Star is the first stars appear in the morning before the sunrise. If the Kiribati people have a flag of sunrise, we have a flag of morning stars. So it's very significant in terms of people's Oceania people culture. In 1962, the Dutch, we were colonized by Dutch. The Dutch signed an agreement with Indonesia, facilitated by UN in New York, and it called New York Agreement. They decided about our future, our political future, without having us sitting there, sign an agreement. Why? Because US and Indonesia want this. We have one of the biggest gold copper mining in West Papua in the world. And they signed an agreement, Indonesia and the US signed an agreement, the US President Kennedy signed an agreement in 1967, even before we have a formal political process of decolonization. In 1969, just after the Act of Free Choice or the referendum that conducted by the UN and Indonesia, the Indonesian military actually occupied us by sending troops under the operation called Trikora military operations. So when people talk about occupation, it's not only in Palestine, it's just next to this place. It's just in the Pacific and Asia. Why I keep mentioning Asia? Because Indonesia is one of the biggest actor in Asia, trying to pull everyone to come together and join as an ASEAN. And we respect that role. But there is unfinished work that Indonesia and other Asian countries must look at this. During the referendum in 1969, people protest outside the venue. Okay, I will just move further. Because of that unheard struggle, unheard voice, then some of our people, our elders, have to take up guns and fight. Since 1969, they fight. They fight under the name of West Papua National Liberation Army. Like or not, that's the reality of the struggle. I know that we all support nonviolent resistance, but this is the reality that the armed conflict and armed struggle is still ongoing. And we have a quite similar flag to our brother from Puerto Rico. I just want, because I see you, Luis Rosa, with your flag, and it's reminded me of my flag as well. But we also have nonviolent resistance, cultural resistance through music. If you're coming from the Pacific or from New Zealand, Aotearoa, you might know Black Brothers, one of the very famous West Papuan band who use music to resist against this colonialism. We also have Mambesak, which is focused on nation and unity building using our culture and music. We try to go back to the family in the Pacific. We form United Liberation Movement for West Papua so that we can be accepted in the region. This is in Vanuatu. Vanuatu is the only long-standing nation states in the Pacific that officially announced their support for West Papua. Where we are struggling, we are fighting in West Papua, we are fighting in Indonesia, and we are fighting in the regional and international. That's our theory and our practice for our self-determination struggle. Yes, my time is finished, but I think I just want to use this opportunity a little bit. So we organize, we mobilize. I'm not a researcher or academic, just like you. But because of my involvement in the struggle, I have to do research as well. I have to learn from other struggles in the world. So then I will be able to involve and to support the struggle of my people. I don't really publish my research, but actually I'm a researcher, I can say, because I did a lot of research on nonviolent resistance, civil resistance around the world. With my solidarity movement to Western Sahara, to Palestine, to Puerto Rico, to Tibet. That's why we form a forum called Occupied People Forum. And that's how our people resist. We cannot raise the flag, but we can have a symbol of our flag everywhere. This is in Aotearoa. Sometimes our solidarity group did a protest at the Bee House in Wellington. And the last part is I just want to say that we also have a drum. We call it Tifa drum. So when the oppressors come and keep oppressing us and killing our people, it won't shut up our mouth and our struggle. But as we said, like the Tifa drum, the more you hit us, the louder we become. Thank you.
So we're not actually finishing. We have a couple of minutes, and we are ending in this particular way with these particular unknown flags, and you have to keep standing because your T-shirt is your flag.
Okay.
But we're asking Malaka, we're asking Yusuf, we're asking Luis, we're asking Carlos and Valerie if she's here. We're asking Hlaila to come up here as the Occupy People's Forum here at the closing of IPRA. And we're going to, just don't wait, come, yes, we're asking, come. We're not actually asking, we're demanding. We're demanding free Palestine, free West Papua, free Western Sahara, free Puerto Rico. We're demanding all of that, and we're going to give our last 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Can we do 2 minutes, Hlaila? We're going to give our last 2 minutes to Hlaila because Western Sahara. Oh, wait. Okay. It's going to be now 1 minute. To say a couple of words about Western Sahara, which has been in some ways the least represented here today, and then to end with a song that Rosa is going to end us with. So. We're going to set the timer. We're going to have Hlaila say her words at the podium here, please. We'll hold your flag in the meantime. I got, Where's, okay. All right, we need someone else to come up here and help hold the, or no, we'll hold it. All right. All right.
Carlos.
Yes.
Hello everyone, and hello, salam alaikum. Sorry, I'm a little bit nervous, and I'm afraid, but just nervous. Distinguished guests, dear colleagues and friends, it's both an honor and a deeply personal moment for me to stand before you today. First and foremost, I wish to express my sincere gratitude to IPRA for hosting this meaningful gathering, for inviting me to attend, and for providing a space where voices of justice, freedom, and human dignity can be heard. I also extend my heartfelt appreciation to the government and people of New Zealand for their warm welcome, generosity, and genuine spirit of kindness. Your respect for humanity and your commitment to peace reflect the very values that inspire hope in all who continue to struggle for justice and freedom around the world. To life in forced exile, displaced from one's homeland, estranged from one's root, separated from family and belonging, it's to existing waiting for justice, waiting for recognition, and waiting to return to home. My name is Hlaila Ahmed Mohammed, and it was my fate to be born amid an armed conflict, a conflict created by others without consulting the people of the land, without considering those whose only crime was to be born in a territory rich in resources and potential, those who sought profit, placed interests above principles. They turned their opportunism to their racism of distortion and misinformation, transforming my homeland into a vast open-air prison, a place where there is not right to opinion, no right to assembly, no right even to lie, to live freely. Our society is its pure and genuine essence remind me of the historical path and values of the Maori people who struggle for recognition, land and right embodies the universal spirit of justice, coexistence and peace. They are the same values of my people in Western Sahara, long for peace and security that we have only heard of but rarely experience it from those who claim to promote them. Instead, we have no war, systematic oppression, and grave violation of human rights crimes that persist to this day. Perhaps many of you have heard little or not at all about the suffering endured by my people for 50 years under Morocco occupation, and before that, more than a century under Spanish colonial rule. My presence here represents not only myself, but also a thousand of displaced, exiled, and persecuted Sahrawi men, women, and children, whose only fault is to have been born in a land that powerful interests have long covered. This violation continues not only through the denial of our right to self-determination, but also through the ongoing plundering of our natural resources inboard, dealing often with the complicity of international cooperation and government who should know better. This exploitation, the extraction of wealth, harm, and occupied land without the consent of its people, it's not merely a legal or political issue. It's a moral one. It exposes the hypocrisy of a war that preaches peace and justice while financing the machinery of oppression. As a Sahrawis, we believe, as all people must, that it's our legitimate right to live in freedom, dignity, and independence, just as very nation deserves sovereignty over its land. So too the people of Western Sahara deserve the right to determine their own destiny free for occupation and exploitation. In this same spirit, we stand in solidarity with all people who continue to struggle for their freedom, the people of Palestine and every nation still suffering under colonialism and injustice. True peace cannot exist without justice, and justice can never be achieved without freedom.
Wait. Song. Switch places.
Okay.
This song is in one of the West Papua language. It's a song for longing for freedom, longing for peace. Yako jar bucuria openo, Yako jar bucuria openo, Yako jar bucuria openo, Yako jar bucuria openo. Namiri pairi ene mamerawe ene dimi normomo ene namiri pairi ene mamerawe ene dimi dormomo. Thank you.
Freedom land. Freedom all.
Tēnā tātou. Tēnā rā koutou. Kei ngā kai kōrero. Whai wāhi mai ai koutou. Te whakatakoto i te tangi apa kura. E ngā huatanga. I mōreku ai koutou i roto i ngā pakanga. Tau ki runga i a koutou i te ringa. O nā kāwanatanga i roto i a koutou. Mihi ana ki tā koutou whakaheke roi mata. Ki tā koutou māhora i tā koutou riri. Ki mua, te whakamenenga. Kia tūwai te riri. Kia hohowai te rongo. Kia māpuna mai ai tēnā mea te roi mata. Hei whakamauru i te mamai. Kei roto i a tātou. Kei te au e noho mai nā. Ko tai ki tēnā wahanga. Whakapi ake ai tā tātou hui. I've been given the honour, unprepared honour, because I came dressed in summer clothes today. And in our tradition, I should be wearing long trousers for any formal events. And you can see my esteemed, my uncle, my tuakana, well dressed today. And Kelly says, I think it'll be appropriate if you opened up and introduced these two special men today. To close off this session of our conference, knowing that we have another session later on tonight, a bit more happy. And according to tikanga, we proceed with our mate, our loved ones, but then we finish and complete all ceremonies with food and joy. So we can de-escalate, decompress, take off the restrictions of being in sacred spaces. So a lot of what we are doing now, since the beginning of our conference, has been committed to combining our spiritual protocols with our wānanga, our conference over these last few days. And from a Māori point of view, it has been poignant, beautiful, traumatic, but we embrace the mamai, we embrace the pain and the grief through a process of our healing, where we release through crying, sharing, lamenting, through song and narrative, we are able to reach some sense of balance. So I welcome everyone that has participated so far, and it is appropriate that we finish our conference as we began it with tikanga Māori, with myself and my tuahine Puna at Orwai, and then we have two very significant people in my life personally have guided me in various aspects and are here to close our conference today. Significantly, in my first year at university, I was taught by the man on the left, and I was staying with the man next to him in his house. One was a nice easygoing teacher. The other one was a overbearing uncle. Whakapapa is what determines our connection. My whakapapa to these two men is deeply embedded through our whare e te niho te atiawa, through our hapu, through our iwi, through our kaupapa, through our compassion to the kaupapa of Māori tanga, land reclamation, rebuilding our people through culture and politics, and making sure that our land and our resources are protected. And I'm sure that they will be able to give a dimension of their lives that connects to peace building in the various ways that our people around the world have managed to do that, resonating with our indigenous ways of doing. So, whare hoka wano, a well-respected teacher, actor, and leader. After a 30-year career in education, Whare Hoka took up the CEO role for Taranaki Iwi in 2016. More recently, he has moved into the Pou Whakahaere CEO role for Te Tōpuni Ngā Rahu, the Ngā Iwi o Taranaki regional body. As a tribal leader with whakapapa tupari haka, peace and reconciliation are integrated parts of all that he does, and his leadership style encompasses those values. Honourable Ma'ara Okeroa. Honourable Ma'ara Okeroa was born and raised at Pariakapa, holding numerous educational roles and represented the Taitonga Māori electorate as a Member of Parliament from 1999 to 2008. He held the role of Associate Minister for Arts, Culture and Heritage, and has continued to be heavily involved in Taranaki and iwi political and cultural affairs across Aotearoa. O mai te paki, tēnei te wonua. Titiro, ki te maunga titohea. Urunga parihaka waitotoro. Ngāti kota takiri tangai te kahua wikitoria. Kaitoa. Koto te witinga manu arua. Potu te hari. Kei te rangi mai. Exo. Mahaka hei te hua tanga o parihaka. Hue.
Ai, ka rongo au i ngā kupu, te rongo I tau, te riri I tū, te ringa I kohia, e tonga, ngai ana ki nei te neka karangi anei, e te motu haramai. E ngā reo take o te motu haramai. E ngā iwi o te ao haramai. Haramai kawe mai, ai ngā akotanga, ngā mamaitanga, ngā pēhitanga ki roto I oko te whinua ake. Kia hahau te rongo ki roto ki tēnei, o ngā kaupapa ki rongo pariake ina nahi. Te pāhuatanga kua kōrero tia nei, anei te tahi o na ngeri. E ngeri, kia hiki te weiru o te tangata. We use this as a form of healing. We use haka and song and dance. And we just did a little acknowledgement of parihaka. That's got a heavy kaupapa, but we use that voice to let go of some of the tension and the trauma that we faced in our journey. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that journey because it just relates to everything of all of our speakers. So I acknowledge the languages of the world, the indigenous languages of the world. I acknowledge your connections to your place and your space. And I acknowledge the connections that we have in terms of decolonization, imperialism, all of those isms that we've been subject to as iwi take of people of a place that has visitors come upon us, they feel a better way of living. But of course, it's all based on commercial greed and taking advantage of resources within countries. So that's a bit of a connect. But just lovely to be here. I'm sorry to be here on the last day. I was out at Parihaka yesterday because it was a significant day for us. And of course it acknowledges, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But I was out yesterday, I was in my gumboots and shorts, that was appropriate. But today we're in longs. just a little. Oh, where's the little toy? Up. Welcome to our place. Welcome to our space. And you've probably been caught in, you've been based in conference for 3 or 4 days. Beautiful days, and you've been inside. Ka aroha. I think you're going to get to do a little bit of touring later on today. But there's our tribal nation around our maunga. 8 iwi, numerous sub-tribes, many marae, many extended whānau, and at times we get on. And at times we have our own tensions, and certainly traditionally we had our own tensions. You'll see on this map of our 8 iwi, you're based in the north up there, we're in Te Atiawa territory at the moment. Te Atiawa, that marae that Tonga and Puna welcomed you onto the other day, is all part of this wider iwi. But of course, there's 8 of us, very connected, very in touch. We squabble like siblings squabble, but we're also looking for opportunities to work together. And we're lucky because we have a geographical feature that helps us to think about working together. And I hope you got to see him this week.
Oh yeah.
He's been a bit of a show off this week.
Yeah.
You know, he always gives us a little hickey, little uplift spiritually. And you know, we're humble people here in Taranaki, but sometimes I think he's a bit of show off. And we're glad he does at times, because it just helps us to reminds us of who we are and where we're from, and our responsibility. He's a po, we call him the po, and it's a person of huge standing within our community, like this fella. He's a bit of a po. I wouldn't mess with him. He encourages, our maunga encourages us that we must lead our community and be confident in our leadership and confident in steering our people forward. He reminds us that we have a responsibility to look after our place, our environment, the impacts of our environment, the impacts of farming. Dairy farming is a huge economy in our region. But unfortunately, it came at the expense of our indigenous forests, our ngahere, and all of those things. It's had huge impact on our waterways. And I'm not knocking dairy farming, because some of my whānau are dairy farmers, but we need to have a balance in how we drive those things forward. And finally, he encourages us to pass our traditions on to our next generation. So that's our part. Okay? Naki maunga. Hope you get to go and visit him. So I just want to take you quickly through all of the, you know, as I listen to each of the stories today. This is our story. Captain Cook came visiting in 1869. There were other visitors earlier. New Zealandia, in terms of where our name from Dutch visitors earlier, but it was Captain Cook that had a huge impact on us. And by the early 1800s, which 200 years ago, so recently colonized, really, as I listen to some of your stories, recently colonized 200 years. 200 years ago, we were living very traditionally. Our language was the only language. Anybody that came to us had to know our language to communicate. So you can imagine in 200 years now, a very small percentage of our population speaks our language. So it wasn't just about taking language. It wasn't just about taking land. It was also taking language and culture. But of course, the other impact was those missionaries. So Mahara's he's Anglican, and I'm Catholic. Okay, so we were influenced by the missionaries, and of course, just a tool of colonization e te whānau. And I'm not knocking Christianity in a religious sense, because many of us have whakapono, many of us have faith, but there was also other things at play. And the other tool of colonization was the gun, was weapons. So it really changed the nature of our warfare within our tribal communities. If I say the Bible in one hand and the gun in the other, get the picture. And then this is just a time period. It goes from the 1820s. So we're talking, I'm talking 200 years ago, very significant transformational period in our histories, through to the peace pact that was between the Waikato tribes and the Taranaki tribes. And you've got it was basically civil war, whānau, and then who had the gun first was coming to repay some old debts. So that was utu in action, but the gun was a little bit better than our traditional weapons. So a very important period here, but we also started to realise by the end of that period that we needed to collectivise as not just here in Taranaki, but as tribes across the whenua, and you get the beginnings of the establishment of the kingitanga. And then we come into the 1840s so 1841 here in Taranaki, just down here at the port. Guys walked along the walkway every morning when you've done your 10K walk before you have your big breakfast. Okay, down at the port end was when the first of the settler ships came into New Plymouth in early 1841. 6 settler ships come over a next 18-month period out of Plymouth in southeast England. New Plymouth, there you go. Devon Street's our main street. There you go. So all of our names have been colonised. And if you can imagine ships coming across with 150 passengers and families on each of them being boarded here on the beaches of Ngamutu and starting to come into changing the dynamics in this town, which of course was a very provincial, regional little place really. So that's the impact on us. It leads us into a series of uati, we call them oaths, between our people of the whenua to collectivise and come together, because by the 1860, we have the beginnings of the land wars. So again, you can see there's a 40-year period from the 1820s to the 1860s. Huge conflict here, and as I listen, because our conflict was our tribal conflict and warfare was through this period. We've been relatively since the land wars of the 1860s, we haven't really had civil war within on our shores. So we don't know the impact of, I've never faced a gun. I've faced a raka a couple of times, but that's been ceremonial. And where it's ceremonial, but to be in civil war that many of you are in, no, our people have not experienced that. So we are fortunate in that respect. But it wasn't the gun that did the damage to us. It was the pen, and it was the laws of our settler government. So, when I hear you talk about histories not being told, we went to Western schools. We went to mainstream schools. We went to schools that our language was not heard. When I went to school in South Taranaki in the 1970s, showing my age, 1970s, very little te reo Māori spoken. In fact, not even acknowledged, pushed to the side. So we lived dual lives. We would go to our marae on the weekends, to our traditional homes, and hear a bit of language, a lot of ceremony, and then very, very little language, but within mainstream schools. So one of the important dates we didn't learn was this date. We didn't learn and know that this date in the 17th of March 1860 in Waitara, that marae that you visited, that you were welcomed onto, just out on the outskirts of Waitara, was the first shots of the land wars here in Aotearoa. And it was the beginning of the next wave of colonisation. Now you think the settler ships came in 1841, 19 years later, and the impacts of them, their desire for whenua. So the next period leads us through the land wars. It leads us into the wars through the 1863-1860 period, and it leads us right into 1881 when the troops came on to Parihaka. And I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to take you out to Parihaka. Of course, we're going through and we've got an exciting redevelopment of the Papakainga out here, which is great, but we've had to close the gates. So it means that you have to come back. Whānau. And we must take you to Parihaka, especially this week because it's been such a significant week. So Parihaka, when you think about the troops being sent on to a peaceful community, Te Witi and Tohu encouraged our men to come out of the trauma of war. And it's interesting when you think of war and how today in Western societies, when you send your people off to war, and when they come back, you just send them back into the community. And with all that trauma, we have ceremony and ritinga and tradition that to bring those that were involved in war appropriately back into the community, so that they could deal with the trauma of killing and watching death. So Te Witi and Tohu's their stance on Te Maungarongo, Patua Te Horiri, Te Rangi Māori and Maungarongo, peaceful passive resistance, was about bringing our men back. And what did they do? They set up the gardens. They put our men back into the place of rongo. So, Te Witi and Tohu, we are thankful. We acknowledge the transformational leadership. If you can imagine warriors at that time, they were all about, somebody's going to come onto my whenua and take my place. The response is to fight. Tohu and Te Witi realised that we couldn't stand up to the might of the weaponry of the colonial forces. So they preached and led us down a path of passive resistance. And for that, we thank Ane Ngā Moere who were the survivors. So I just wanted to sort of wind this part of it up in terms of the impact that our prophets had on us. And the first of those prophets through that period in the area that Tonga's from, down around Opunake, was a guy by the name of Dua Haumeni. So we always needed and believed in that spiritual uplifting to bring us out of trauma and hard times. And so Dua Haumeni, in the early 1860s period, just fresh off the land wars, he came forth with a Paimarire faith. Dididide hau, Paimarire. You'll hear that. Dididide hau, Paimarire. Good tidings, peaceful tidings. It became a catch cry, and a religion was formed around that that's still practiced by our people up in the Waikato. Te Whiti Orongo mai, we acknowledge here the raukura, and I know I see some of you wearing raukura, and I'll let Mahara speak a little bit more intimately about the importance of the symbol of the raukura to us in terms of being. This line talks to resilience. Ko taku raukura he manua nui ki te ao. That it provides us that sense of standing firm in our place against all of the difficulties that we face. And of course, we've got a current right-leaning government, coalition government, that is taking us back into another uncomfortable place around our language and our tikanga and our environment, a real assault on our environment. So that particular line, ko taku rau kurai, he manua nui ki te ao to be resilient, applies to us today, whānau. It applies to us today. Te witi, it's time to have another go, guys. Come on, my warriors. Come on. This is a haka that was that's become very, very sort of part of our it's our go-to haka here in Taranaki, but it came out of Parihaka, and it's really encouraging us to be Māori and to be who we are, to be proud of who we are, and it talks to resisting the encroachment of tikanga Pākehā into our own tikanga. Okay? Yamo! Taringa wakarongo takahia kia kino hakino wakarongo mai te iwi nei wakarongo mai te motu nei wakabiri kwa kia tawiwi wakore he toko tengwa mai irunga yakowa wamam Mangu te pāne, hokai tatau pakia, tupu ato, pingai weiaru, hako, he pui, te uku kenare noka, witingi, hatara, kangoro, kei, tana tiri paua, kei, tana tiri paua, kapai ka, sawe, hei. I told them we were going to get too much. So again, as I said earlier, we use a lot of that waiata. Now we that haka to bring us out of that riri. It's a good way to release pain and anger. And we use it as a counselling tool. When we go into to work with our whānau that are in prisons and so forth, we use it as a way to release anger. And not just tāne, it's wahine. Often you see the men, especially with the All Blacks, but of course wahine. Some of our best haka exponents. Some of our best weaponry exponents. So those tools have become more ceremonial. But of course, when we were at war, they were the preparation. We use those tools to prepare us for war. So I've just got tohu kākahi, that line in there, kore e piri tauku ki te rino ka whitinga e te rā kangahoro. We use in that haka, and it's really encouraging us not to get to not let tikanga Pākehā encroach on our tikanga. Okay, our tikanga, our protocols of our old people were very clear, and they still apply to today. Tituka Waru, his kōrero e kore au e mate, ka mate ko te mate was really about us, even though he passed on within the next generation. We carry on. So even though we may pass as we all will, it's important that we pass the teachings on to the next generation. Tamariki. Patua te Hoariri was the first one we used in Titiro, that first neri we did. Defeat your enemy through peaceful endeavours. Patua te Hoariri te Rangimārie. And the last one I want to just, this is straight out of the library, repay bad intent with good intent. Utua te kino I te pai. I te iwi, koe re tahi kupu, hei aki a koutou. These are just musings. These are whakaaro for you to take away with you and apply them in the very important work that you do on behalf of your communities across the world. Tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou. I feel like I'm impinging on Mahara's time, so I better sit down. Kia ora.
people, just to show how very flexible we are, almost a very physical haka that was delivered to something a bit more gentle. This is just one of many little waiata that we sing occasionally.
Beniti atumato ki a koutou, mō koutou, tai mai nei ki konei, ki te iwi ngā whakaro. Kei te aha atumato, e hoa ma ki a orara. E hoa ma. E hoa ma ki a orara.
Ko piko ta mā unga o tēnei nā ki a koutou. I au e rongo atu i ta hama mā o ta auwe tanga kei roto i o koutou wairu. Hine ngaro tinana. He kei o nei te waitai. He puna aroa ki a koutou he pakanga o koutou nei pakanga. It was a tremendously humbling, hurtful in many cases, the addresses that were given, the kōrero that was given prior to us coming up on stage. It was for me, a reminder, and I asked myself, and I feel very humble about this, what have I got to moan about, people? What you are passing through in varying degrees is, we just had a wee piece of that because the societies weren't so sophisticated. They were more brutal, but when I look at the map of the world that has been put up there, and the huge numbers of disaffected, suppressed people, for me, was a shock. We do live in Aotearoa, which is slightly isolated from mainstream. But we tend to think that we're the only people that have suffered from colonisation and all the evils that it brings. Today was something that was tremendously impacting for a young person like me to listen to. What I want to do, people, so that you have an idea, is probably to traverse some of the stuff that was spoken about very eloquently by Whare, but also to branch out in depth in some cases. In view of an introduction, for example, I had a little search because, and I found a person by the name of Alistair Campbell. Alistair Tiariki Campbell, noted Māori poet and writer. He had something to say in this poem that actually summarises very cleverly what I'm going to talk about after that. And his poem is called Parihaka Grieving. Not theirs, but ours, the mountain. Maunga Taranaki, not Egmont, named for some stranger in a foreign land. Tapu, the mountain, dwelling of spirits, top of the village that lay in peace beneath its shadow. Invaded, burnt to the ground, our people robbed, raped, driven out, our crops and every living thing destroyed, our dead insulted by the Pākehā, armed with the sword, the musket, and lying words. Peace was all we wanted. Peace for our tribe to increase, our children to grow tall, allow our land to smile with plenty from mountain to the sea. But the Pākehā would not listen. They were greedy for our land, and when we would not sell, they charged us with sedition. Arming to make war, they seized our land as punishment and gave it to the settlers to prove that it was ours. We ploughed that land. Ploughing the government's belly was how we put it. And when we were arrested, we went willingly to jail. Others took our place until over 400 men were jailed without being charged or tried in court. 38 breathed their last in foul South Island jails. For days, Taranaki hid his head in the cloud and wept at Parihaka grieving. More trouble followed when the armed constabulary set about provoking us by tearing down the fences we had built as protection for our crops, and we put them up again as often as they pulled them down. 200 more crowded the jails to overflowing, and still we would not yield. The more we were humiliated and abused, the greater was our pride in the snow-white feather of resistance. And I'll talk about that adorned our hair. 200 more of our young men, like the others, grinned and went to jail willingly. I was there at the PA when the arresting force arrived, led by Bryce, the hated native minister. Hundreds of our boys spun tops in the gateway and chanted songs of welcome, while further in, a crowd of girls played their skipping games. It was a scene meant to disarm, and when that failed, they took off their mats and waved them at the horses, causing them to shine. The troopers cursed them and rode on, the silence broken only by the low click-clop of hooves. They stopped some distance from Tuiti and Tohu, waiting patiently since midnight to receive them, surrounded by over 2,000 followers in Parihaka, wet and cold, wrapped up to the chin in blankets. 2,000 held their breath when Tuiti spoke, begging the minister to dismount and not ride through the crowd lest he injure a little one. He obeyed with such bad grace, his men winked at each other. They raised their muskets, meanings, Inez and me, as he read the riot act, expecting trouble to break out. When nothing happened, steam rose from the 2,000 heads, letting go their breath. The minister took courage from the unexpected silence. This is a key moment because they had come to totally remove Parihaka from the map and its people. There were 1,250 constabulary and who were extremely well armed, heavily well armed. And if the people had lost control was the exact excuse that that Bryce was looking for, because there was no response. He was hesitant He obeyed with such bad faith, his men winked at each other. They raised their muskets menacingly as he read the riot act, expecting trouble to break out. When nothing happened, steam rose from 2,000 heads, letting go in their breath. The minister took courage from the unexpected silence, commanding Te Witi and Tohu to leave the pā or face the full wrath of the law. Te Witi smiled and brushed aside his words as one might brush aside a fly, then calmly spoke. Friend, my place is with my people, but I will go with you and not make trouble by resisting you. When we heard you were coming, our womenfolk baked bread to feed you. I ask you now to sit with us and eat, and we will talk about our land and why we cannot sell it. Put aside your weapons. You see us as we are, a peaceful people whose only wish is to live in friendship with our neighbours. We cannot sell our lands any more than we can sell the air we breathe. Land is a sacred trust for which we answer to our ancestors. I have said enough. Come, sit with us and eat. Even as he spoke, the minister was giving orders that Te Witi and Tohu would be seized and taken away. And in that huge assembly, not one voice was raised to protest. Not one move was made to prevent the outrage. My poem ends here, and I leave it to other tongues to tell of the sacking and destruction of a dream of the years of government abuse, when our rights under the treaty were suspended and we were stripped of everything that we held dear. The years when the land reserved for us were leased to settlers for a pittance, leaving us with wounds that will never heal. Let others tell of Te Witi's wrong jailings, of the shame we turned to pride. By following his teachings, wearing always in our hearts the snow-white feather of a staunch and undefeated people. The spilt blood of generation cries out from the soil once made fertile. Tears blind the wind, run down the cheeks of Taranaki for Parihaka, sick at heart for Parihaka's grieving. Now, as Wharehoka has said that the raukura is a tohu mo te mātauranga, mo te maungārongo, a symbol for peace. Symbols for individuals, groups, and nations carry enormous energy and power for good or evil. They can appeal to the highest level of human endeavour, or conversely, the lowest. It can inspire acts of tremendous courage and self-sacrifice, or the lowest form of human depravity and crimes against humanity. This declaration speaks of the strength and self-belief that has guided our efforts throughout the various struggles, hardships, challenges, and trials over many years. Quite simply, it speaks of wanawa nui, to be steadfast, stout-hearted, tolerant, patient, unwavering, resolute, persistent, committed, dedicated, staunch, and dogged. These attributes, this approach and mindset was required during the darkest days of our history. That is no different from what you were telling us after lunch. So, the raukura here is worn by our woman. I don't have the fancy machine. I was born in 1946, so I haven't caught up with the world. That's the raukura that's worn by our woman. And what it says here, he pua wai au no runga I te tikanga, he ra renga no roto I te raukura, kutaku raukura, and manawa nui ki te ao. What it says is, I am the fruition of righteous procedure. I am a herb of healing from the sacred emblem, the rokura, that symbolizes determination, courage, and resilience. Taranaki iwi experiences without precedent. Our experience is one of loss, the loss of land, and with it, the loss of autonomy. But the most deplorable aspect of the Taranaki iwi experience was the loss of all rights afforded under the rule of law. Taranaki iwi were not accorded the rights which we were entitled to. The rule of law was not respected. What you were talking about prior to us is something about being denied the rights of a human being, being treated with humanity rather than inhumanity. You've had all your rights ignored. The pathway seems to be the same. We're separated by thousands and thousands of kilometres geographically, the past, and yet these features are generic to us as Indigenous peoples. It's bloody upsetting, I'll tell you. The government commenced a campaign of military and legal, political, and ultimately economic subjugation. Leadership, tribal and social structures which have truly left a void today. The accumulated result of multiple Crown actions has resulted in the Taranaki iwi being as barren as the summit of our Maunga Taranaki. The unique nature of the Taranaki iwi claims are such that no other tribe in the country has endured the number of successive abuses and violations from the government. No other tribe in the country endured the same numbers of imprisonment without trial. No other tribe in the country had legislation enacted to justify the imprisonment without trial of their tribal leadership, specifically Tohu and Te Iti. No other tribe in the country was engaged in the same level of welfare, physical conflict with the Crown for a long period, we estimate 21 years, people. No other tribe endured the same level of military occupation of their land and homes by armed constabulary and military troops for the same length of time and in the same repulsive way. No other tribe in the country suffered the extent of loss of life at the hands of the Crown, and no other tribe in the country suffered through the darkest days in New Zealand's history. Put quite simply, the Taranaki experience is totally unparalleled. Let me quote, "Ka mate te whenua, ka mate te tangata. Ka toro atu te ahi, ki runga ki te whenua, toro atu ki taku tai moana. Land and people will die and fire will spread across the extremities of the land. The war experienced in the Taranaki region was the longest, most devastating in New Zealand. It is unparalleled by any other conflict between Maori and the Crown. It spanned multiple generations, and its impacts can continue to be felt today." E piki mai pu
Mai huka mi mai te piukara e tohu riro nano mahe re te mau nawa e tai e pati ke tike te tai e pai matupui. E tai e papi ko ngā noka wana te maunawa. Tui atu tui mai o taua nei re ngā ringa. I te roaro riki kuini te riti kai manawa. Pe ko mai e kawana ko wahau tō rariki. Ko koe taku pono ngā he te kuini. Kari maunawa!
This waiata signals the beginning of the pāhuatanga of Pariaka. It is one of our beautiful waiata. It talks about our people being able to listen to the sound of the bugle as they marched up the road. 1,500, the number of constabulary and volunteers. They could hear them coming. And in spite of the intimidation, the absolute fear that this would be the day that they could be exterminated, they still stood. Fancy having this view when it's repeated in Proverbs, whā ngai mai tō hoariri, meaning feed the enemy. Even if you didn't want to taste your beautiful made parawa by the old people in Parikaka. Whareoka also made reference to our maunga. The traditions of Taranaki iwi attest to the critical significance of Taranaki maunga, paua kai and kaitake. Spiritually, psychologically, culturally, historically, physically, and artistically. They are hugely powerful symbols of Taranaki iwi identity. Spirituality, they continue to be the source of immense inspiration and treated with respect and reverence. Taking these elements together, they constitute the core fabric of Taranaki iwi. We have two people here from the South Island who will say the same about their maunga, which is the tallest maunga in Aotearoa. Aorangi te mau, tēnā koutou. But here's the catch. Taranaki maunga murua katoa ka iri te raupatu. Taranaki whenua murua katoa ka iri te raupatu. Taranaki tangata murua katoa ka iri te raupatu. Taranaki maunga, total plunder, total confiscation is upon us. Taranaki land, total plunder, total confiscation is upon us. Taranaki people, total plunder, total confiscation is upon us. Our past is never past, and it's not divorced from the present nor the future. The confiscation of the maunga took place in 1863. The confiscation of all Taranaki lands took place in 1863. Those 60 seems to be bloody ugly. And in Māori we say, ngā rā pauri, Ngā rā tukupu pauri kerekere. These are days of darkness. The moon and stars give no light. We often refer to the natural phenomena to explain ourselves, people. So, therefore, the restoration of shattered trust will be no easy thing for the people of Pariaka and other places. History's battering blows have been relentless. You know, I struggle with this. The more you know about the story of Pariaka, the tougher it is to tell. It's like swallowing broken glass and trying to sing. The upshot of the meeting with Bryce and his cowboys and their muskets was that they were arrested and then jailed. Let me share with you, when I find it, that what was invented in terms of the charge in court about 2 or 3 days after they were jailed. Sorry, people, trying to find it. Here we go. This is in a courthouse, and after the arrest of Tuiti, Tuiti was charged with being a wicked, malicious, seditious, and evil disposed person, and with wickedly, maliciously, and seditiously contriving and intending to disturb the peace of Her Majesty's subjects, and to incite and move to hatred and dislike of persons of Her Majesty and the government, and by inciting numbers of Her Majesty's subjects to insurrections, riots, and breaches of the peace, and to prevent by force and arms the execution of the laws of this realm and the preservation of public peace. And on the 17th of September, did wickedly, unlawfully, and maliciously declare the false, wicked, seditious, and infamatory words that he uttered when he said, Māku te whenua, māku ngā tāngata, kei ko te tino pakanga o tēnei waka tipuranga. The land is mine, mine the people. This shall be the paramount struggle of this generation. What has been is becoming apparent in that sentencing is what I call flying false flags. Because in Māori, it says, ka tū te pono o te kōrero teka, ki rongi te whenua, taharo atu ai ki taku tai mōna, putano ki te ao. Falsities stand as the truth upon the land and spurting out to the seashore and to the world, an almost total vilification of the prophets and what they stood for. And that the Pāhuatanga plundering of Pariaka were two journalists who snuck into Pariaka and were able to say this. A very sympathetic view articulated by two journalists who witnessed the Pāhuatanga unbeknown to military authorities. They say, quote, the whole spectacle was saddening to the extreme. Pariaka was an industrious, law-abiding, moral and hospitable community, calmly awaiting the approach of men set to rob them of everything of value to them, a most uncommon view of the time. Now, when people sort of take action like this, and it seems to be a shared experience of what I hear. You've got to ask yourself, what is the driving factor? There are two factors here. One commonly used reason is that there was this incredible hunger and greed for land, unabated, like the tide, incoming time, irrevocable force, not to be pushed away, not to be pushed aside. But there's the other element, and I call it racism. And it goes something like this, people. My culture is better than yours, more superior, more informed. Therefore, my will must prevail. Tohua Te Whiti represented an alternative authority, as Hayes or Riseborough historian states, a reproach to Victorian notions of racial and cultural superiority. Now, to back that up, we managed to get some editorials of the time and comments that support this view. Quote, within the rebel districts, no mercy shall we show. Let a price be put up on the head of every rebel. So we don't only descend from Tuti and Tuhu, we're rebels as well. You know what that's like. Let them be slayed without scruple whenever the opportunity is afforded. We must smite and spare not kindness, conciliation, bribes and threats, have a like thou. We have tried to civilize these people. We have given them magistrates and schools. We have filled their bellies with flour and sugar. Still they are determined to fight, and we, in self-protection, must treat them as species of savage beasts, which must be exterminated to render the colonisation of New Zealand possible. Here's the internal political view of the Speaker of the House in 1961. Urged members to act justly with respect to the Treaty of Waitangi and all obligations the Crown and local government with respect to the natives must be faithfully acted upon. Let us be just to all. Privately, let me quote, the private view of the Speakers of the House in 61 is, quote, one thing is very clear, Maoris have wanted a good licking for some time. They're a confounded nuisance. They need an uncommonly good thrashing. And in 1863, he made the following comment. Equal political rights in every respect conferred upon them and us, but no legislation will ever make a white man regard a coloured man as his equal. Such views were the visible parts of an iceberg that floated deep in the natural colonial psyche and which has still not floated away. That's what's happening at the moment. Only my learned friend is the one who put it in a more polite way. William King, he were in his wharenui for the pohi at Owai. William Kingi Te Rangi Tāke, a revered ariki of the Atiawa, stated this is his quote. Ko enei whenua e kore e hoatu a mata ki a koro a ringa na ko te kawa. Ki te rite mata ki ngā manu o te mōna, noho I runga I te kōpatu. Ka pari te tai, ka ngaro mea tau kōpatu I te mōna, ka rere ngā manu, no te mea, ka hore in Nohonga or Rata. These lands will never be given by us, but given to us into the governors and your hands, lest we resemble the seabird perched upon a rock. When the tide flows, the rock is covered by sea, and the birds take flight, for they have no resting place. Then he gets really serious, does the koro, and he states categorically, e kore au e mo kai kia hokana a waitara kei roto I te kapu o toku ringa. Kore o te tuku, kore, kore, kore e tuku atu te whenua. Or you staying there, I will never sell waitara. It rests in my hands. The result of that, of course, as we've alluded to, was the beginning of the war, 1816. I'll just read just a couple more, because I think it's important. Kotahi minute. I get told that it's only 1 minute to go. But you see, that's what the government used to tell us when we were when you're in government. No, we didn't listen, we said, oh.
Where's that belt? Where's that belt?
I do want to cover this one though. The role of women. There are two aspects to this video. In Pariaka, the women were abused. The rate of sexual diseases previously unknown. Raped. Mixed children were born. And when Te Witi came back to Pariaka, he said, "Nā wai e me pura pura." A pura pura is a speckled potato. That's how he categorized his children. And by saying, "Now, who are these people? Who are these children?" And someone said, "They are ours." Now, the other side of the story, e kore e tū tamawaine ki te wā o te kore kore. This is hugely significant because of the loss of the men, over 600 of them out of the community, and the loss of land that happened, and the increasing marginalisation of our people into a landless proletariat. The woman took up the struggle to retain the land, independence, and identity. It also references the enormous resilience of women without whom our families may have perished in the enforced absence of our men. Of course, we would have perished. They were the only people left to look after the children. Did no kind, because the bloody outside on the swore, the colonials practiced what you call the scorched earth policy. That's an ugly thing to do to kids. So, the woman stood up. I have the view that's shared by my esteemed gentleman on my left, one who's counted down 1 minute, that if it wasn't for our women and their absolute resilience and faith, we wouldn't be here. I always wondered when I was a small kid in Pariaka, who were the dominant forces. And when we all went to deal together, it was very clear who were the dominant forces. It wasn't us, it was our women. But they were smart, they did it the right way, you see. So, the shame and embarrassment of our wahine and their sufferings at the hands of colonial soldiers. Hey, these are referenced in our poi. They are in our poi. People, I live there. There is much more to go, but as you've been invited to come back again in the future, when Parihaka will be in a position of properly and appropriately hosting you, we look forward to the occasion.
Thank you so much for your acknowledgement of our leaders of Parihaka and Taranaki. And one thing that I have purposely done, beyond being a hyper-individualistic academic, is to ensure that the voice of Parihaka, through collaboration and bringing the elders and Matuakana to this conference, so that the voice of Parihaka is beyond one individual scholar who writes, but definitely you can see that this narrative is layered and belongs in the memories and hearts of a wider community. So I want to acknowledge Rawatahi, ko anko mahara o ke roa, and whare hoka wano e hara mai rā ki te kauhau I te rongo ki a tātou I tēnei a ia I tēnā horua.
I'd like to share just one thought. In our assembly, we have two sisters who are descendants of the tribe that looked after us while our prisoners were in South Island. If it wasn't for those people from Christchurch to Dunedin, to the West Coast, to wherever, Dunedin, West Coast, Christchurch, if they didn't give us, this tribe, the hospitality and the kaitiaki, the ngāki, our numbers of prisoners would have definitely been far less who would have come home. So both of you, this is a public statement for us, for Parihaka, to you.
Thank you. This is so much for us to take away, take with us. So I think we are so grateful for being in this land where we got chance to welcomed by them, and we are warmly welcomed, and we were given so much of